So it's a pleasure to have George Dow, co-chairman of Green Christian, with us. I think the best thing, George, is for you to introduce yourself and just tell us a bit about who you are and what you do, and then launch into the things you'd like to talk to us about.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And yes, I'm co-chair of Green Christian, and I share that role with Deborah Tompkins. So I recognise some of the people here, and that's lovely. And I don't recognise others, so particular welcome to all of those people, really. And thank you, Staffan, for hosting these sessions. It's great. A little bit about me as introduction. I joined Green Christian 14 years ago at a conference in London which celebrated the 25th anniversary of its founding. I can't recall, I really can't, how I was made aware of that conference, but I do recall vividly how I felt when I got home that evening. That seemingly miraculously, two parts of my life had come together. The two, it seemed to me, incompatible jigsaw pieces. A deep passion for creation on the one hand, and my experience of Christianity up to that point on the other, had somehow merged in the form of this amazing charity full of similarly thinking people. I do recall weeping before God in deep thankfulness that this was something I could dedicate myself to. So after 40 years of working and living in London, my wife Jacqueline, who's an Anglican lay reader, and I moved to West Cornwall. And I'm now very much involved in church life as we attempt to achieve the Gold Award for the Diocese Green Church Kerno. Now, that's like Eco Church, but being Cornish, we have to do things slightly differently down here. But it's a similar sort of thing. And I'm also involved in the Ecumenical Cornwall Environment Working Group. Okay, so I'm going to speak for approximately 25 minutes. And just a brief note on how I'll structure it. First of all, a few words on the way of life in general. The topic for this evening, prayer and devotions. And then the resources which Green Christian provide to help us. And then I'll finish it off with what I personally found to be particularly helpful in my own faith journey. I hope that's okay, and just so that we know where we're going here. So first, a few words on the way of life. This will be the first of 4 Wednesday workshops between now and October, each covering one of the 4 elements or spiritual disciplines of the Green Christian way of life. Now, the 4 elements are prayer and devotions, living gently on the earth, public witness, and encouragement. I'm aware that some of you who are familiar with those, and indeed some of you are what we call companions of the way of life, and others who may not be aware at all. The Green Christian way of life is offered to Green Christian members to whom or for whom care of God's creation in all its forms is a fundamental outworking of their faith. The way of life is a calling for deeper engagement and shared encouragement. It's a way of life which focuses exclusively on creation care. Companions are those who have made a commitment to follow the way of life. Explorers are those who have expressed an interest but don't yet feel ready to make that commitment. I'll just mention here very briefly the support which is provided to companions and explorers. First of all, for both companions and explorers, we send monthly letters on the first of each month. Now, they're not newsletters. They're personal stories from the author's recent experiences and reflections on their faith journey as companions. We also hold every 2 months Zoom gatherings, more Zoom gatherings. We hold those every 2 months, and we've been doing this for the past year and have so far covered art and poetry, moving from the subversive to the mainstream, prayer and encouragement, the significance of stories, Lent reflections and actions, and next Monday evening, the gathering is going to be on the role of non-violent direct action and protest. We also hold for companions and explorers and anyone else who comes through the door an annual gathering, or at least we used to before COVID, and we will continue to do that, I'm absolutely certain, next January. It's always held in January. And it's just lovely to come together because we don't see each other very much. So that's companions and explorers. For companions only, that's those who have made that commitment, we've established 16 regional groups. Now, the regions are fairly wide, but nevertheless, everyone knows of everyone else as a companion within reasonable travelling distance of each other. And the idea is that while at the moment they can only do so probably by Zoom, they'll get to know each other in that way, and then when they come out of COVID, they will be able to meet. And indeed, some of them have been in existence for quite a long time. So that's really lovely to come together and support each other. That fourth discipline, encouragement, comes into play there big time. We currently have 62 companions. We've got one who joined yesterday actually, so that's really great. Okay, let's move on to the main topic for this evening, prayer and devotions. What do I mean by devotions? Well, devotions are times set aside to pray. Some Christians call this Bible study, or quiet time, or daily watch, or daily offices, or sacred time, or simply an appointment with God. All these names point us to the essential purpose of this vital time to grow closer to God. Many Christian communities, either residential communities like monasteries, say, or dispersed communities, have what they might call a rhythm of prayer, which may involve specific times for set prayers at set times. The Green Christian Way of Life community doesn't have that. There are no specific times or specific prayers which companions are expected to follow. That's up to them. There is one exception to that I'll talk about later, but generally it's up to the companions. Many companions will already have their own ways of praying, which have been developed for years and perhaps decades in some cases. It's not up to Green Christian to tell them how to pray. The only expectation is that companions do find a time in each day to intentionally meet with God. Okay, so that's defined devotions. What do we mean by prayer? Well, that's more complicated. People have different ways of praying, and off the top of my head, in preparation for this talk, I came up quite quickly with 11 ways, which is by no means a comprehensive list. I should also say that these are not ways of praying which are particularly focused on creation care. I'll speak about creation care resources later, including prayers, which Green Christian provides. But for the moment, here are 11 ways of praying, which you'll be familiar with all of them. And it's not a top 10 or a top 11 with the first one best, it's just how they came into my head. The first one, probably the most obvious way, is using words, either our own or those provided in books. The second way is silent contemplation, using perhaps our breath or a mantra such as Maranatha to bring our wandering thoughts back to be with God. An example of this, amongst many others, would include the teachings of John Main in the Fellowship of Contemplative Prayer. And there are a whole host of phone apps for this purpose as well, so if we're on a journey or something, we can also use them. The third way of praying is with, well, it's really two, is with other people or by oneself in a special place, a sacred spot where we exclusively use for this purpose. Now, some people might not have that. You might be living in a studio flat or whatever, a small accommodation. But it's just that time where you can clear the table and sit in that special chair and be with God. Fourth one, chanting, perhaps using Taizé chants or singing hymns or other songs of praise. Another musical one, listening to music of all kinds of traditions, the most obvious being hymns or modern Christian songs, or classical, or folk, or jazz, any form which brings us either to a place of rest, an expression of joy, or a lament. The sixth, reading sacred texts or Christian literature on creation care. And again, we'll look at examples of these later. 7, using tools such as Ignatian spirituality, where we may imagine ourselves in a biblical story. What would it have been like to be there? How would we have felt? Number 8, walking in nature, mindfully sensing the wonder of God's creation through sight, looking closely at plants, the smells, the movement in the wind, the changes brought by each season. But most of us live in towns and cities, and we may not have easy access to wilder places. So number 9 is walking in towns, looking at the structure of buildings, how they were built, who built them, and what natural materials were used in that construction. And 10, art, either by meditating on particular icons, paintings, drawings or sculptures, or picking up a paintbrush or pencil and expressing ourselves. And again, more on this later. It's okay, I'm not going to ask you to paint anything, you're okay. Finally, poetry, with the rich treasure of spiritual poems. R.S. Thomas, George Herbert, Gerard Manley Hopkins, Wendell Berry, Mary Oliver, and lots of more poets, both past and present. Okay, so that's a really quick skim through some types of prayer. But what resources can Green Christian offer to help us in our prayers? Well, at events, and we don't hold too many events at the moment, or at least person to person. We have annual retreats, and I should say, pencil in your diary, what we're hoping is going to happen from the 8th to the 10th of October this year. We hope to hold another annual retreat in Ringsfield in Suffolk. So that would be great if that actually happened. We weren't able to do that last year, but we held an online festival which 320 people attended via Zoom. So annual retreats are a little different. And there's always a session on prayer and reflection. It's so good to pray together. And as regards the way of life, I referred to before the annual way of life meetings. And again, that's where we use that exceptional prayer I spoke about earlier, the companion's prayer of commitment, which is when it's on the companion's secure page on the website. So I guess you have to be a companion to have a look at that in full. But we're going to end with an extract from that prayer this evening. And the purpose of that prayer is to just publicly come together and say those words together as a kind of public commitment that we are accountable to each other and to God, and we're here to help each other. But most of the resources that Green Christian provide for prayer are on the website. So we're not going to go there immediately at the moment, but if you do go to, it's a very, very, very easy to find. You go to the home page of Green Christian and you click on resources at the top of the home page, and then on worship materials, and you find a whole host of things. You find reference to a prayer guide. Now this is a wonderful resource. It can be emailed either monthly or daily, and it's compiled by Green Christian member Emma King for our daily prayers. And a monthly version is also available on the website. There's a whole host of hymns, lectionaries, liturgies, even plays and sermons available there as well. So lots of examples there to help you. And specifically prayers. There's a number of prayers, there's specific prayers, including prayer resource books, and some of which I'm going to show you some of those in a minute. And yesterday, yes, yesterday, we received out of the blue a set of 26 prayers for the climate and ecological emergency, written by Reverend John Swales from Leeds. And he asked if Green Christian can endorse them, and of course we will. We hope to make this remarkable and inspired work available as soon as possible. We also have an arts page, and I think we may be able to put that up on the screen, and we'll just talk about that for a couple of minutes. Are we able to do that? Thanks, Stefan. Okay, I mentioned earlier that visual art and poetry can be used as a kind of prayer. About a year ago, we set up this new page. Art and poetry are powerful ways to access and express emotions which can feel inexpressible, as says here on the page, particularly when considering such enormous issues like the climate crisis. Now, the idea of this page is that Green Christian members who are that way inclined, who are who feel, well, everyone's artistic, but who feel they want to paint and draw, or even sculpt, they can take photographs of those pieces of art and email those in to our arts convener, Graham Norman, who would put them up on the web page. If you have original poetry as well, you can do that. And when you click, we're not going to do this now, but when you click on any of these boxes, you'll start to go in and see some of the pieces of work, which were, in a sense, an expression of prayer. So that's a quick overview of some of the resources, thanks Stefan, which are available. I hope you found that helpful. If you feel you'd like to suggest any other resources which might be added, do please let me know. And perhaps some other ideas can emerge in our breakout sessions. And you can have these conversations when you can share what ways of praying you've personally found best and what sources you've used. To the final section of this talk, what do I personally use? Okay, I start my day with 2 emails. The first email, and they come round at the same time, it's about 7 o'clock. The first one is the Green Christian Prayer Guide. I referred to that earlier, and that tells me about a particular topic that I might want to concentrate on in my prayers. The second one is something which has become very special to me over the past 2 years, and that's the daily emails which I get from Richard Rohr's Centre for Action and Contemplation. Now, most of you will be aware of Father Richard Rohr, the American Roman Catholic Franciscan, who's written extensively over several decades and who's established that centre which sends out these emails. And they set me up for my day. It's kind of the start of the day. Having said that, I'm usually awake for about 2 hours before then, but this kind of sets me for the day. Now, Richard Rohr has written so much about the concept and reality, I feel, reality of the universal Christ. This is his book. I don't know if you'll be able to see that. Yeah, well, you'll be able to see it back to front, I suppose. So his book, The Universal Christ, has been hugely important to me in my own prayer life over the past year. This concept of seeing Christ in everything and everyone is challenging and extraordinarily formational in my spiritual journey. It's become very central. So it's a fantastic book. So that's the start of my day. At the end of my day, and I do things in between the two, but at the end of my day I host a night prayer for what's called the Penlee cluster of 4 churches, of which I'm a member. I'm a member of one of them, but the 4 of them are in a cluster. And I use for that the We Worship book from the Iona community. That's this one here. And it's wonderful. That's from Wild Goose Publications. They do morning prayer and evening prayer. We just do evening prayer from it. The third book, and I've got all these, I've sent all references to these to Staffan, and he will send out, complete with ISBN numbers, but most of them are on the website. I updated the website resources yesterday. But just so you can see the picture, I know a number of people, Green Christian members, actually use this. It's called A Heart for Creation, Worship Resources and Reflections on the Environment. And that's by a Green Christian member, Chris Paulhill. And I think, from memory, I think there's actually a piece in there by Judith Allenson on biodiversity all those years ago. So there you go, if you want to have a look at that one. Cherish the Earth by Mary Lowe. Another beautiful book on reflections on a living planet. Cherish. I don't know how well you can see this, you probably can't, but as I say, they'll be sent out to you, the links. Another gorgeous book, I will stop doing this in a minute, but The Green Heart of the Snowdrop by, and I can never pronounce her surname, it's Kate McElhaga, I think. Kate McElhaga. Now, the late Kate, in fact, she died a few years ago. Poems and prayers of gathering and being, creation and self, Advent and Epiphany, Lent and mothering, Easter and Pentecost, pilgrimage and endings and blessings. A book that's become really important to me, and I know others as well, is a book called The Lives Around Us by Dan Papworth. Now, Dan Papworth is a spiritual director and facilitator at Cheltenham Forest Church. This is a beautiful book. We use it a lot in Green Christian in gatherings where my way of life companion, colleague, Deirdre Monroe, will have a silent time where she'll read from this followed by silence. And it's beautiful. I'll just write one example. Each chapter is actually put together in a similar format. So chapter 1 is the ash tree. Chapter 4 is the raven. Chapter 12 is the shrew, and so on and so forth. And it takes an element of nature. That could be a living, well, it's all living, but that can be an animal or a bird, or it can be a tree, a plant, another kind of plant. It can be a river. And Dan will talk about that in his experience, an experience of that for 2 pages. Then there'll be a Bible quote, which is of relevance to it. And then he'll finish off with a reflection and practice. A gorgeous book. Finally, Soulful Nature. I'm going to stop here because there's lots of other ones. But Soulful Nature is a spiritual field guide. I think this is quite a recent one. And it's by Brian Draper of Radio 4 Thought for the Day fame and Howard Green. So there's lots more, but I will tell you to please look out for another one. It's not published yet. It's by John Philip Newell, and many of you may know him. He's a wonderful theologian and a leading authority in Celtic Christianity. And he's got one coming out in July called Sacred Earth, Sacred Soul. So look out for that. And finally, 3 books of poems, collections of poems, many of which focus on the wonder of creation. R.S. Thomas, collected poems. Wendell Berry, collected poems. And Mary Oliver, new and selected poems. Just beautiful. Now, are these prayers? Yeah, I definitely say they're prayers. They're reflections on creation and nature and the author's place and impact from it. And while specifically God is mentioned a lot, Creator God isn't necessarily mentioned in every poem, but you know what they're talking about. It's a wonderful set of poems. So, that's a quick run through, an overview of the way of life, some of the various forms of prayer and devotions available, the resources and support which Green Christian provides, and a personal perspective, what's really important in my own prayer life. I hope you found that helpful, and I'd be really interested to find out about what you found helpful in your lives, and perhaps share it with others in the group and afterwards as well. So thanks very much for staying with me during this. Thank you.
Wow, George, do you have to stop talking? Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you so much for that. And it's going to be a very expensive week now, catching up on those wonderful books that you've shown us. What we're going to do now is we're going to go for a brief, just reflection in breakout rooms. So 5 minutes each, plus a minute recall. And you're meeting some random neighbours, and what we'd like you to do is just reflect a little bit about what you heard and share with each other the things that resounded for you, the things that really stood out. And then you've only got 5 minutes, so take your time to share. When the 1 minute warning comes up, you know it won't be long until you're back with us, and then we can have some Q&A. Thank you, George. I look forward to seeing you in 6 minutes. Well, great. I think we're mostly back now. Thank you for that. Well, I think we just now open up for thoughts, reflections, questions to George. And so either stick your hand in the air or try and do it electronically. That's even better if you can, but I wouldn't blame you if you can't. And let's roll it from there. I
should say, I guess Sometimes I think these Q&As should be Q&Os, which are questions and opinions.
Yeah, yeah, here. Yeah, no, just reflections, and thank you, Sandra. You're first on.
Okay, hi, Sandra.
Yes, I thought I loved the fact it was also all the things you mentioned were things that obviously have meaning for you. I was surprised because I've known you quite a long time from retreats, and I know your wife does circle dancing. So I was very surprised we didn't have circle dancing, because I find that there's something there is something, well, all movement. I like the walking ones, and the town ones, for instance. At the height of COVID, I lived near a hospital, so I took to walking round the perimeter of the hospital, and it was still surprising, living in the middle of Salford, how many trees. I think there are more trees along the M602 motorway and some of them are very beautiful, which you have to pass as you go around the hospital.
Thanks, Sandra.
I'm just curious to know.
Yeah, go on, sorry. Yeah, okay. Sometimes when I'm doing talks like this, I read them through to Jacqueline, my wife, and I haven't done in this case. Had I done so, she would have said, "Where's the dancing?" But of course, you're absolutely right. And where you have music, you have sometimes dancing, and it's a lovely celebratory thing to do. And of course, lots of churches are doing that, aren't they? Well, I've come across churches where there is banner waving and dancing, and so that can happen inside churches and it can happen outside. Yeah, really good point. I should have included that. That's number 12, definitely, dancing.
And don't the Sufi Muslims, is it the Sufis do that? Where they this spinning round, and it's quite amazing.
Absolutely, the whirling dervishes, absolutely.
That's the one.
An ecstatic state of a trance, if you like. Yeah.
Judith, we got you double hand and hand.
Yeah, we've been having Zoom service or Facebook services, and one in 4 is a family service with children's actions to the hymns, and I really like that. And AMSOC can do it. You can do it in your own home in front of your laptop, whereas people might not want to do all the movements in the big church service. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Lovely, and that's a prayer. That's a response to something that's touched you, in a spiritual way. So that's a prayer, I would say. Yeah.
Right, so Rod, I think you got your hand up, and then I think Jerry thereafter. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Just for those who are a bit newer to Green Christians, could you just confirm that it's an ecumenical group, this way of life, and what exactly the commitment is for people thinking of joining?
Okay, that's a really good question. Thanks, Rod. Yes, it is ecumenical, and as Green Christian is, I look around the board members of Green Christian, and we have Methodists and Baptists, and we had Quakers, we have Roman Catholics and Anglicans, and every single shade of Anglicanism, I think, and that's reflected in the Way of Life community members as well. What's expected? Sorry, that was your second part of your question, is what's expected. Well, in terms of prayer, I think I said that it's really down to the people themselves, the companions themselves. But we do ask them to pray and come to God on a daily basis, and also to do their best to follow the remaining 3 disciplines: public witness, living gently, and encouraging. And now those are the next one. In the next session in a couple of months' time is going to be on living gently, which is a it's a huge subject. What does living gently mean? It depends. It depends where you are, who you are, what you're able to do, what that means. So it's really about a commitment to try to follow. No one's perfect. It's a commitment to try and follow these disciplines as best you can and encourage each other in doing that. That's why we've set up the sort of regional groups. There is no money involved in it, and there's no, all you would have to do to be a companion is A, be a Green Christian member, and B, write to me to say you want to be a companion. And then you start to receive all the stuff that I talked about earlier. So no, it's very light touch. No form.
Just if I could share just personally, George. I mean, I've been a Christian for a long, long time, and I was. We were talking actually to Terry. It was all just Terry Green just now. It turns out that he was talking about Northumbria community, and a dear friend of mine, Terry Ansell, introduced me to the contemplative way of praying after nagging at me for 5 years. But, it was the Ignatian journey, that imaginative prayer process, where I ended up, and after quite a journey, I ended up at the top of a hill, the Hill of the Fool, with Christ there, and looking out at this amazing creation that actually, for the first time, connected me with that my faith is about the living care of everything, and that to live with Christ in the love of everything. And that's why I've come along to be involved in Green Christian, because this connects in a more vivid way that beautiful faith and that beautiful love with this wonderful world that we're in. And churches, a lot of churches are working the way through understanding that this is a critical hub where we can actually get that support and feedback. Sorry, I was over enthused there, George.
I remember, just briefly, I remember my own experience, my first experience of Ignatian spirituality, when we were asked to, the passage of Lazarus being raised from the dead, and Mary and Martha and Jesus and the disciples and the onlookers, and you had to choose one person, who it might be an onlooker, it might have been a disciple or whatever. What was it like? What time of day was it? Was it hot? Well, probably. was it? This was high drama in front of you. How did you feel? That was an extraordinary experience of being, catapulted from 2001 or something into, the year 31, and I was there. I was there in Palestine, and thinking that was an awkward moment, and that was a miraculous moment. Yeah.
Thank you, Sally.
Can I just come back to?
Oh, sorry, I do apologise. Yes, Jerry, then Sally.
I wasn't sure whether you said Jerry, but you didn't. Can I just come back to the reference to the circle and dancing in the circle? That prompted me to just pick up this little coin, which I was given in North Dakota by a Native American Christian group. And to them, the circle is an essential part of their life. They do everything in a circle. And this little disc has one of their traditional articles on, and also a prayer on the back, which reflects on the importance of being together in a circle when praying.
Thank you, Jerry. That's a lovely sharing. Thank you so much.
Indeed. Now to Sally. I apologise.
Okay, thank you. I hadn't forgotten Jerry, actually. I was going to say, but then you came in anyway, so that was good. Yes, I was just wondering, you said there were 16 groups. If you became a companion, there are 16 groups, local groups that might meet together. And I wondered whether there's a list of those anywhere.
I can certainly make those available. Certainly, yeah. I can't actually give you names or contact details, but I can tell you what the groups. Well, maybe I certainly couldn't share email addresses at the moment, because that has to. I'd have to clear it with everyone before.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of, I can tell you, there's no central place, Sally. It's really, so for instance, we have a northwest region, which is where
Right.
region, we have a northeast region, we have a London region, we have a southwest, and so it's that kind of.
I'll tell you the reason I'm asking, because I'm in North Wales. Sometimes Wales might be a region, but that's no use because you can't get to South Wales. You know, you could get to Manchester more easily. So I was just wondering.
Okay, well, in which case, we have at least 3 of those 62 people live in Manchester or Greater Manchester. I know that.
Right.
They're very active. And there's Terry. Terry Green has just put his hand up. He is one of those people. So,
Right.
you know, if you were interested, do let me know, and I'll pass you on to Terry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, I've got a question. I enjoyed working with Christian Climate Action for quite a while, and they were doing a daily prayer session together. At 9 o'clock, we'd dial in and take it in turn, and some sort of meditative prayer session, and then people would disappear, and there'd be maybe half a dozen that would stay on and just talk about how they're feeling. Well, what do you think there's a role for that in Green Christian?
Yeah, that sounds lovely, and I've seen things similar to that as well in other communities, if you like. Possibly. I think we're all so busy, aren't we, really? And I'm not sure how workable that would be, but it would be a lovely thing to do. Do you mean perhaps for companions to have that ability to actually, at 9 o'clock in the morning, you know, in perhaps a Zoom meeting? Is that what you mean?
That's right. I mean, I was amazed at how effective it was. I mean, it was so often that it was a bit too much, for me. But they did it every day. It was a very wonderful connecting and sharing process, and that wasn't particularly. I'm just saying, hey, look, we want to pray. We want to come in front of God, and we want to share that spirituality. And it's really helpful if other people are feeling similar things.
Was that over a short period of time, or was that?
It was about 6 months I was involved with that. I think they're still going now.
We're on to something, Staffan. I think I need to take that away and have a chat to the other people in the coordinating group.
We need to pray about this, yeah.
Yeah,
but maybe it's an entry point into companionship. Just a thought. Now, I'm not sure. I think it's Sandra and then Bernice. Is that right? Sandra, are you still looking to, or have you just got your hands?
Yeah, it was. Yes, it was the mention of Wales. Another place we have been to for retreat is Nodfa, and it reminded me of walking the labyrinth, and also they have kind of it's not a Stations of the Cross idea, isn't it? But it's the different aeons of life as you walk around, and those kind of structured ways of focusing on a walk and you did something, I think, previously about, maybe that was about aeons as well, using a labyrinth.
I remember that. But how come I didn't mention labyrinths? I mean, absolutely, I should have mentioned. So we're up to 12 now. 13, in fact. Yeah. Thanks very much, Sandra.
And we have a labyrinth workshop in August, which I'm very excited about. And I'll send you an information link at the end of this, and you'll be able to dig in and find out. It's going to be a brilliant session, I'm sure. I can't remember the name of the lady now, but she was trained in France on this. So I think now we're on to Bernice, and then we'll be on to Sophie.
Thank you. It's about the morning reflections, morning prayers you mentioned, Staffan. In our breakout group, I was talking to others here about the fact that we've been doing that in Sway in the New Forest, which is where I'm living now. I'm new to Green Christian, so hello everybody, and I'm new in Sway as well. I've only been here officially since the beginning of this year. For the last 4 years I've been living in France, and I'm back in the UK now. And it's a lovely village to be in. And during lockdown, more and more has gone online typically, but what has started is this weekday 9 o'clock, just for a quarter of an hour. About 20 plus of us from the church come together to reflect. Somebody will lead it. There's different people who lead the reflection, very different styles, and it's just really lovely. But it dawns on me that although a lot of people who perhaps wouldn't get together normally at that time in the morning do so now, what happens when normal, whatever is normal life, resumes? Because will people go on meeting online? I don't know. Maybe it's something for the way of life, because people are dispersed, but I'm not sure it would continue locally. I don't know what anybody else thinks.
Well, my own view is that one of the great advantages of online like this, even though we're all a bit zoomed out now, is that people with real common interest from all over the country can connect.
Yeah.
And we all care about this stuff, so we can really help each other with it. Yeah. Now, Sophie, I think you're going to be the last question, probably. We might squeeze one more in, but let's just see. Sophie.
The question, it's an addition. I'm part of CCA, and they still have their prayer meeting every morning at 9 o'clock. I must admit I don't go to it at 9 o'clock. I'm about having breakfast, or just about. I never think of it, but I know, and if anybody is interested, I'm sure they would welcome anybody, and I can send the link. It's the same link every morning all year round. So yes, they do meet still at 9 o'clock every morning.
Good. Yes, great, and it is a good thing. So I'm just looking at my watch now, and we do like to let you all escape after an hour without feeling that. So I am going to now ask Joan to come back and give us that closing blessing.